Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to a Down to Chat podcast. With me is the only man that could turn a simple coffee order into philosophical debate. It's Adam Nather. Hello, Adam.
Hi, Tim, and hi, everybody. But it's not just me today. We're joined by our very first guest.
We are. He's the only driver who has a setting on his sat nav for aggressive overtakes early. It's Alex Pritchard. Hello, Alex.
Hi, everybody, and yeah, great to be here. I've been watching all the other episodes, and it's great to be a part of it.
Yeah. So you are an honoured first guest. So you can either set the bar really high, or or
No,
not.
like my racing, let's start in the gutter.
Cool. Well, this is fun. It means there's even more opportunities for people to disagree and comment. But of course they're going to agree because we're all right in everything we say. Right. Championship summary. We'll get to this nice and quick, as is the way people have been liking the championship summaries, I think, so far. So after Bayford Meadows, which went well for some, not for others, we've now got heavyweights 1 point between Joe and Anwar. Kurt's dropped back a little bit. Interestingly, Joe and Anwar had their worst round of the year at the same time, which I suppose was useful for both of them. Kurt had his second worst of the year, so just top three in the championship at the moment, not having a great time in that at Bayford Meadows. Alex, you're on your own at the moment in fourth.
Yeah, you're in no man's land.
Yep, I think I'm going to stay there. If Kurt's form continues, I think I'm going to probably stay there. If my form continues, then yeah, I think it will lead to the same result as a 4 plate for next year, probably.
And then fifth to eighth, covered by 13 points, which is fun and interesting. And then we've got Marcel, who looks like he's pretty much, as long as he doesn't have any shockers, I think he's won C2 this year. And we got Ross
he's got a big
Sandwell, who, Adam, you had a bit of a chat with Ross, didn't you, over the weekend? Had a nice little chin wag. Did you?
Yeah, he was really lovely. A C3 as well, which is kind of crazy. You've got him in 10th? I can't see him in 10th.
Oh, no. I was just saying that he currently leads C3.
You can only lead C3. But yeah, really
Yeah.
lovely guy. And for his first season of 100 to get into an A final and go as high up as he did, it's pretty impressive. We've had some really good C3 in the past 3 years. Like you had Mo started off as a C3, was it 2 years ago? And then last year, Marcel, who's now only a few points behind half the C1s. And then now you've got Ross, who seems to be doing really well as well. So it always seems to be the person who wins C3, like, has a real big fast track to eventually being probably a C1.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
this. Alex, you might know this. Like, what's the rule on a C3 being forced into C2 before the end of the year?
I think that certainly making A finals, you go up, and C3s into C2, you generally go up into a C2. You can go up if you want to. Most half decent C3s are there for a year, and then up you go to try and keep it as a novice championship. But like you say, not to forget the lightweights. Harrison Kirkham was pretty decent. I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Greg won C3, didn't he? And went up, and then taking A finals. But the thing is with C3 as well, if you're a half decent novice, you get a lot of practice in overtaking. And I think that half of your win, well, a few of your sort of great races or even wins start with decent starts and overtaking. And if you've had a year of starting at the back, if you've paid attention to what works, then it can lead to, decent starts going forward.
Yeah. I mean, there are certainly some places as well where your first laps can be absolute mayhem. So starting the back isn't necessarily always a bad thing, and then you end up getting some pretty good results out of it, which can make for some fun racing when you find yourself maybe a bit further forward than you thought you might be at the start of the weekend, sort of thing. Speaking of lightweights, what's the lightweight championship look like? So we got Fraser, who after Bayford extended the lead to 9 points. I think it was a bit closer, wasn't it, before the weekend?
It's just 1 point.
Was it just the one? So yeah, up to 9. Rory and Dante, though, are separated by 1 point. And then Fraser, Rory, and Dante have pulled out a bit more of a buffer by the looks of it to McWilliam, who's in fourth, and then it kind of separates as you go down there. Still very similar point spread to heavyweights, which is interesting. maybe not quite so much at the top in the way that works, but in general, if you look at how many points your seventh place in heavyweights has, it's pretty similar to what a seventh place in lightweights has, which I thought was interesting.
There's a fundamental difference in that there's only 9 winners in our heats, whereas there's 15 winners in the lightweights. So it is very, very competitive at the top because there's more opportunities of actually plucking wins out for more people. So at the end of the year, they'll have more points on average than we will, all those lightweights.
Yeah, that's very true. I was going to say there was actually only 12 heats at Bayford just due to entries.
Oh, yeah, it was short,
For the
wasn't
first
it?
time.
On a few
Yeah,
people, yeah. Is anyone going to sit there and say, "Oh, I think this person's going to win this year"? Is anyone like sticking the chips on anything yet on the roulette table of the lightweight championship?
I think if you go off form, I think it depends if he's missing another round or not. So Rory's sitting second at the moment, and he's 9 points back from Fraser. But that's taking into account that he actually missed a full round of drops. So he missed round 3, which would have been Wilton, I think. So the fact that he's missed a round is only 9 points behind Fraser. If he's doing all the rest of the rounds, I think he takes my vote. He just looks really good when he's on track as well. Like, he just looks very imperious. And he won multiple rounds when he just started coming up from the juniors last year. So
yeah,
I think if he does the rest of the rounds,
I think he's the one to watch. I think Fraser's very, very tough to beat on his day. He has a good lap in him, and he's never afraid to get his cart stuck into a gap, a very tiny gap.
Looking at it, the win spread is, I think you've got Fraser, who at the moment seems to have won the majority, like the most heats. But apart from that, like the sort of your top 3, top 4 have got comparable heat wins. By the looks of it, I think it's going to come down to who has the best, like the best finals drops in terms of, like, you got Fraser, who's there. He's had a 26th at round 5.
Right.
That was Rye, wasn't it? So yeah, I mean, that's a horrible score to have as like an auto drop. So you that's a bit of a waste, isn't it? So that could always come back to haunt.
Conte has a 12th as his worst, which is a lot better than Fraser's. But Rory's worst finish has been 5th in an A final, I think.
But he's missed around, hasn't he, Rory? So he can cock up another final. He'll still be fine.
That one's going to be down to your last race of the year, I think. A bit like last year.
Same with the heavies. It could be the first time in a while where both championships come down to the final A finals of Butmore, which is the last round.
Yeah, I remember the park the bus year. That I ended up coming out quite well on that one because obviously, like, Joe initially got out in front. I think for him to win, he had to win, and then Anwar, I think, had to finish 3rd or worse, or 4th or worse, or whatever it was, and he'd got himself up into 2nd, and it was like, well, there's no point just driving off into the sunset, so it like was a proper see if he could back him up into the pack, and it made that front group very tasty, and sort of people tripping over each other to try and make the best of it before the end of the race, which was quite fun.
Yeah, that was in terms of how Joe drove that race. That just it just adds to the opinion of his sort of racing strategy. And if you were to like have a top trumps of the racing brain, then Joe beats everybody in that regard. It's sort of how he executes strategy and how he places his car on the track for his defense, his overtakes. It's imperious, really.
Well, speaking of how people put themselves on circuit, how was Bayford, everybody?
Not the best for me.
I quite enjoyed it. It's a track that I absolutely hate, but I had a pretty good time of it.
I'm surprised because it's similar in a way to Rye House, and you get on really well with Rye House. I say similar in a way, like it's a tight and technical circuit, and maybe definitely more technical than Rye House, but Rye House is equally as tight.
It's strange, really. I don't know why I haven't got on with Bayford Meadows that much over the years. Maybe it's just because I haven't had many good results from it. But I've just hated every single inch of the place. But I've come into half decent form at the moment, and I just a good weekend of it, really, to be honest.
I've always liked Bayford. I don't know if it's a romantic thing because I obviously had not my sort of 10, 11 year, whatever it was, sort of break from racing, having stopped doing owner driver stuff and then started with Club 100 experience. And the first bit of Club 100, apart from going to Wilton to do your first test to make sure that you're not about to bin it off on every corner, was at Bayford Meadows, and like I'd never been there before, and it was just you look at it, the face of it, and you look at the track map, you look and you're like you can't race here, like it's too twisty. But I think the racing there is great. You can pretty much overtake on every corner, bar maybe one or two.
It's very difficult to defend as well, because you can go around the inside of most of the corners, but you lose so much speed in your overall finishing attrition in terms of what it costs you to defend, that you have to defend most but not all corners.
Yeah,
I mean, like turn one, you can defend, but you're so slow because of it.
On the Saturday, I mean, I had about 20 minutes of defending from Andrew O'Neill in the second SP60 race, and that was possibly the sweatiest race that I've ever had. It was great fun, but yeah, it was mentally exhausting as well as just being a hot and quite tiring day anyway.
I don't think the heat helped with the weekend. Like, it just made it even harder to drive what I think is already quite a hard and technical track. Like, it was like, what, 26, 20 degrees? Which was just very, very warm, and it felt very humid, which I think just added to the difficulty of the weekend, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously hot enough because people were trying to steal the shade of the awnings. I need to start charging people.
And I had a great sort of inspired by you at the last round to bring my awning that we could get cover in, and it did give us the cover that made it a bit more bearable.
I mean, on the Saturday, part of the reason I ended up bringing like a crate load of Lucozade the next day is I just had the worst headache from being dehydrated, and it wasn't even like I hadn't drunk that much during the course of the day. Obviously, it was enough to sort of give you a bad headache, which wasn't ideal. But what wasn't a headache was I had pretty decent results at Bayford, a fourth, a third, and a first through the heats, which were what I think the fourth I kind of inherited an extra position when Anwar tried to make a baby with your cart. Adam. Third was just a fine race, and then a win in the third heat, which I thought was a reasonably sort of decent drive. Had a good cart and sort of managed to sort of progress reasonably well, even though it's a sort of slightly further forward start. Just sort of made the most of everything, which I thought was all right. And then probably should have finished second in the end in the AO. Just let a bit too much space on the penultimate.
Is that what did it? You left a gap for Mig.
Yeah, like coming through. So turn 3. For anyone that doesn't know Bayford Meadows, you've got like a fast turn 1, a little flick turn 2, and then that goes straight into a hairpin turn 3. And going through that, I gripped up more than I had done earlier. I don't know if I'd maybe turned in a little bit too early or whatever, but I had to take a couple of bites with the wheel to go around that hairpin. So that kind of like compromised me coming out of it. So I went not a full defensive going into the left-hand hairpin that came after it, but sort of a little bit off to put him off. And then from that, got a tiniest little slide on the apex, and then getting the drive off that corner. I think that was enough for him to get a good run. I didn't get the best run, and I left a cart width, whereas I should have just pinned it white line and then gone round, because I thought, well, if I leave that much, it means I can keep my speed up if he does try to poke a nose in. But I hadn't accounted for the fact that he had just a way better drive off the hairpin before than I did, and that was enough to get him fully alongside rather than just his nose.
If there's ever any doubt, then you send that cart straight to the white line, and you probably had enough doubt to just do that.
On the last lap, I had an opportunity, and I was almost a bit too close to him. So coming out that same sort of right-hand hairpin, left-hand flick onto the back straight, he went fully defensive. So I went out, cut back, and got a really good run off it. And I was just too close and clipped his rear bumper as I tried to pull alongside him, and then that just killed my momentum going down towards the horseshoe. And I had to settle for third. But I mean, I'll always take a proper C1 podium, like third on the road. It's not easy to come by. Second would have been nicer, but I'll take a third.
You both had good karts as well. Once the dust had sort of settled, forgetting what Anwar had under him, which was better than everyone else. You two were out there without any of us being able to catch you really. And a good kart under you is great, but you still got to drive it well. You still got to drive it to the aspects and the nuances of, it's a better bottom end or better grip or whatever. And yeah, you both did that very, very well. I think that you pushed me along for a little while, and you did that in the right way as to help yourself. But then you've nipped in with a decent move and headed off at the right sort of time.
I don't really have much to add because I couldn't see it. I was so far back that I can't really add much to seeing your final because I was a bit further back and I just see you randomly off to the distance from time to time. So I can't really give a comment on how your final went other than you did really well from the sound of it. I don't think you could have done much better. And it's funny how you and Miguel were neck and neck because you're on the exact same points in the standings as well.
Yeah.
Could be a bit of a tell for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so I had quite a good start in that. I'd seen that Andy had, for whatever reason, as we were rolling onto the straight to go, he had a bit of a gap. And normally you get pushed from the back, so you're touching the cart in front. So he had a bit of a gap. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. I floored it very, very early, smashed his rear bumper, and then sent our line so far forward that I'd got a massive gap back to third, and I went into second. I actually led the race for 2 whole meters with unfortunately tyres that weren't warm enough for me to grip the apex of turn 3. But I did make a good move, but the cart just slid off. If I'd had the cart for the whole warm up, I'd have been fine.
If that had stuck, how do you think the race would have played out for you if you'd managed to keep in front of him? Would you have just?
I would have won. Yeah, I would have white lined
so?
everything. So I think that it was a very good chance I would have won that. Andy might have found a way through, but if I'd actually inherited first on that first lap, I would have gone around the inside of every single corner, and the only way I could have been beaten is by 2 or 3 of you going around the outside and then training each other just to push someone in front of me. But that would have been it then. The doors would have been closed, and I would have just backed all of you guys up into fighting each other and chaos ensuing. Because that's what I would have had to have done, because there was you, Mig, and Andy that were faster than me. Joe, who would have been creative enough to probably get through 1 or 2 of you, and then Anwar the same, but with an even faster cart. So just training around the outside of turn 1 was the only way that you guys would have got me at that point. I was very, very close. If I'd had warm tyres, I'd have kept it on that sort of turn 3 move.
So crazy how close, like how little moments like that can really just completely decide a race. But yeah, for my day, it started off okay. I had a pole start. I didn't think I had the cart under me, but I just thought to go anyway, which honestly was quite a big error on my part, which meant I just ended up getting overtaken quite quickly in that heat. Then on to the last lap, I went defensive into the snail section. Not sure what corner that actually is. Maybe turn 7 or 8 with Amwell, where I went defensive and kind of closed the gap, not realizing he was up behind me. That caused him to mount my cart, which I think is the first time I've had a cart on top of me in Club 100. Well, actually, maybe that's the second time. But yeah, and I didn't end up losing anything out of it. I still was able to keep third, but unfortunately for Amwell, that sent him down back a bit. Next heat, just struggled at the start. There was just a bit too much carnage going on, and I ended up basically being last, and then had to work my way back to 7th. And then final heat, my back start from 12th to about 4th, which didn't seem too bad. But in every single one of my heats, I just felt a lot slower than I did in the practice. Just coming out of the hairpins, I just never seemed to be able to get the drive, which the first hairpin especially, I lost a lot of time on in all the heats and even my final, which for me is just a standard hairpin. I don't know why I struggled so much there on the weekend. And then in the final, started 11th, tried to make a move around the outside on the second lap, which dropped me back down to about 16th, and then got back up to 12th, and then was stuck behind Ross Samuel and Adam Britton, who were just both white lining it for like the last 5 or 6 minutes of the A final. I was only able to get them on the last lap, finishing 11th, pretty much where I started. So not a great day. But I've sat here before the podcast started with Tim, just trying to figure out what really went wrong, and nothing went great, but nothing felt really badly. So I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest.
What could
Yeah,
probably
interesting.
determine, what determines very good heats sometimes is just the start. Sometimes you get lucky with the starts letting you through, and sometimes you make your own luck by going through them as well as possible. Dickey was always very, very good at starts. He would make it work for him, whereas he wouldn't be the fastest driver out there, but he would come through 6 or 7 places from most starts, certainly on his rear ones. And maybe you just had starts that didn't lend themselves to you. And
No, I do think the starts is a weak point. You're right there.
It's a difficult circuit as well. So if you're finding yourself on the outside going into turn one, and that gap doesn't appear through that kind of acceleration zone going into it, that's then trying to sort of make the outside work for the next 3 corners, which especially when you got down to that like sort of turn 3 hairpin, if you've got a lot of people that are then running wide through that, it's just forcing you further and further out, which then makes it very difficult to try and hold something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You mentioned like how you felt in the practice versus the racing. I thought it was interesting how in the racing we were on the Mitas tires again, and it seemed reasonably consistent, like it did at Rye House with them. But you looked at the kind of times that was being set initially from having new boots at the start of that morning practice, and there was a good sort of 7/10 of a second drop off, which I don't really remember there being on the Rye House weekend in terms of people going out and being 7/10 of a second slower suddenly after the first few laps.
well, the purposes of a fair test is to have equal conditions, isn't it? If you think back to your high school science classes, and the surface of Bayford is quite abrasive but very low grip, which is a very, very unusual surface in the first place. It's quite slidey, even with new tyres on. It was very, very slidey. And the thing is with Rye House, it's quite grippy. So, in comparison, it's very difficult to actually have a fair sort of toss up between what one means and the other. I find the surface of Bayford very, very confusing in the best of times. I haven't done much driving in the wet there either, and I can't imagine it'll be that great because it's not that grippy.
If it had been wet that weekend, with the with tyres that people have said aren't great in the wet anyway, and then on a circuit like that, I mean, like even at the end of the weekend, and with the better boots, that second infield hairpin, the right-hander, still felt super, super low grip. I mean, on the Saturday, it was like ice. You're basically drifting around the corner. But
yeah, I think that one thing that we do know about these new tyres, I really didn't like the setup that we were given from how the carts turned out for the Saturday in terms of new fronts and old rears. I think that sort of told us that it's not a good mix for this brand new tyre because it's not good anyway to have new fronts and old rears, but this tyre in particular, it was horrible on the Saturday. And I think that it cost quite a few of the top level drivers some places. I think you're included in that, Tim, where you went backwards, and it was unfortunate that you did that. But some rears were very used, and some were very, very used. And I think that one of the things that I would like to see more of, or less of, is actually mixing the new and the old tyres. Just either give us all old or give us all new, and we'd be better off on that mix.
Reminds you of Wilton. I think Wilton round 3, they did the same. There was still the Dunlops of the old tyres, but we had new front and old rears on the Sunday, and it was noticeable, and people were commenting that the carts felt weirdly balanced for a lot of the day. I remember quite a few drivers saying that coming out of corners like Christmas, you had the front end grip, and then as soon as you transfer the power on, the rear would just instantly kick out. It was something that I noticed and had to adapt my driving style as well, which, yeah, I don't think it lends to a great setup. I didn't try the Saturday on the minus tyres, but if it was worse on these tyres, then I can imagine it being quite difficult. And a lot of drivers did comment on how difficult it was to drive those karts, how they were set up on the Saturday. So yeah, I think you're right there, to be honest.
What kind of takeaways in general did you have from Bayford? Because like I said, we talked a bit about the tyres and how I thought initially at Rye House I quite liked the Mitas. After Bayford, I'm maybe not so sure. A different compound maybe would be better, but I mean, my takeaways are more to do with driving in general. But I can come back to that in a minute if you've got something more intellectual.
In terms of the takeaways, if you're going to talk about tyres in general and takeaway, it hasn't changed my opinion that I prefer the Mitas tyres to the Dunlops, and it's got to be you can look at it from a selfish point of view and then a sort of championship sort of point of view. And I think that the consistency is good for everybody. On the Mitas tyres, I think it is leading the better drivers even more to the front than they were previously, which I like. I want the better drivers to race with at the front. And yeah, Bayford hasn't put me off them at all. If anything, I'd prefer just exactly what we've been given over the last 2 rounds to come in all year next year.
I'm a bit more on the fence. I like the minus tyres, but my issue is I think they tend to be quite grippy. I've had the luxury of driving Bayford with the new Dunlops in the Extreme 60 earlier this year, and they had a lot less grip, but it made the circuit feel a lot more technical, and there seemed to be a lot more field spread. I think I felt like there was quite an abundance of grip throughout a lot of the day, maybe less towards the end, towards the A final. But I think that I'd actually thought that it meant that the gaps in the field were a bit shorter. I could be wrong. I've not done the maths or really checked the time. It just felt that way. But for tracks like Bayford, I think they're pretty good. The tracks that we're going to next, which I think we will have the minus tyres, such as Clay, I do have a bit of worry because if they are grippier, which they feel to be, it would make tracks which have really fast corners and really short braking zones. Maybe it'll even take away corners where you brake. So I imagine the last corner at Clay might be more of a lift instead of a dab of a brake, or might even be, some people reckon it might end up being flat. So that tracks like Bayford, I think they're good for. Tracks which are really, really quick, I think they might struggle with. So I'm still on the fence, in all honesty.
I think it'll provide more spread at Clay because Clay it's all high speed corners, isn't it? So I think it'll wear the tyres quicker and it'll give a bigger field spread because you're just asking so much. So if you've got a particularly aggressive driver versus a particularly smooth driver, the smooth driver will use less tyre than the aggressive one will. You know, whoever gets into, say, Owen Genman's kart will just drive around on the hubs. I think that when you're asking a lot of the tyre and it's a grippy tyre to begin with, I think you will see some degradation there and some inconsistencies between karts depending on use.
My main takeaway from Bayford, I think, was in general. I think the driving across all the heavies was pretty good. I mean, especially after what was Rissington, Rye House was better, and then I think this has been another step better again. I mean, there were 16 penalties across the entire heavies race meeting, which you'd probably still say is 16 too many, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not too bad. Bearing in mind that some of those penalties will be procedural, like your braking formation at the start, or a cone penalty, or things like that, which aren't necessarily poor driving standards. It's just lapses in concentration, which don't really hurt anybody other than the individual driver themselves. And then on the counter to that, Adam and I were watching the start of the lightweight meeting, and they had a bit of a telling off from Barnaby after a couple of races. Gonats, how many penalties do you reckon over the first 2 races of lightweights? Bearing in mind we had 16 across the whole heavies meeting. How many penalties in the first 2 light race races?
Well, I looked at the penalties on race 2 specifically, just because I thought, I wonder how many penalties there are. So I saw there was about 8 in race 2, so at least 8.
Yeah, 7 in race 2, 19 contact warnings in race 2, 9 penalties in total across the first 2 races. So easily more than half
90.
of what we had in the. Now, in fairness, after Barnaby gave them their bollocking, they were much better.
They did have a red flag when you say that. They did have a red flag in a heat. Yeah. 2 heats later, that was the red flag, and a driver was in an ambulance. So,
Oh god, yeah.
After
The
that-
thing is
it was better.
I don't know if it's because everyone's been doing it, so they're going to encourage each other to do it. But dare I bring up the whole was this who's to blame video, bleed neck, everybody, that we don't want to see any more of. But yeah, you watch. I was watching a video the other day because I try and watch all the videos of all drivers driving round because I just love the racing that much. And I was watching a lightweights video, and it was just tap, 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 and bump off and went through. And it was like, oh yeah, that person went through. I'm like, Christ Almighty, caught the bumper of someone else, tapped someone else, and then went through. This was just like one lap from this one video, and they're all in it with each other like bumper cars. And certainly if any of the lightweights are watching this back, thinking, oh, he's made 7 places, didn't catch a penalty, but he's actually tapped 3 off in this sort of lap, especially when it's the first lap. The loading is just unbelievable, and it's very difficult to police 120. Because we're like older guys generally in the heavyweights, but the lightweights are all young, and then you've got the promotion of the juniors, the cadets to juniors to the lightweights. There's a lot that these guys need to know about just going through clean, and there isn't a lot of that, unfortunately.
No, I think it goes back to in the previous podcast we talked about why punishments in racing have to be harsh, and I think the changes to the rules of engagement that the lightweights were given, in that basically rather than having penalties, you'll have your penalty and you have a black flag. That, I think, that made a difference, because it was a case of, that the third heat that happened afterwards, it genuinely looked a lot more considered from everybody. And when I was going through the penalties across the rest of the races they had, there was maybe 1 or 2 bump and pass penalties. So clearly the threat of having a black flag rather than just positions made a massive difference. So maybe that's the thing going forward, is a case of, okay, well, you'll have your position penalty, but you'll also have to come through the pits and get a telling off and then go back out as well. And if that's what's going to make the racing better, then surely that's a good thing.
I think for me, when it comes to overtaking, and I love a good overtake. If there's a rear bumper, I'm going to sniff it, and I'm going to send something in. But for me, one thing that I think would affect me if I was in that lightweight grid, especially with so many, the grids are so massive, there's so many juniors come up. For me, when I'm looking at overtaking or trying to get in and involved in the action, I like to know everything about everybody. So, I've got an encyclopedia on NAFA in terms of, I think that you do this here, you do this here, all the way down to, I know that when we go to certain tracks, if I've seen you before, I'll know that you're weak at that corner, you're strong at that corner. And I like to know that about everybody. I know, to steer clear of certain drivers, if Mo's on me bumper, I'm going to be dead on the next corner. But when there's so many drivers that you don't know if someone will turn in on you. You don't know if you rub pods that they're just going to, bunk you off on the next sort of corner. And, if I'm behind either of you two guys, I'm buddies with both of you, so I'll be pretty kind to both of you when I'm coming through. But especially if you've been roughed up and you don't know someone, right? You're off to the barrier. Okay, I've gone through that. I haven't been seen. I think that so many new faces in the grid, you don't all get on with each other and say hello, and that friendly aspect is not the same in the lightweights as it is with the heavies.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who then watches the lightweights after doing the heavyweights, typically, like, I definitely don't think that community's there, like there is in the heavies. Like, we were all in the cafe after Bayford. You were all able to have a chat. We all really get along with each other. Don't think that's really the case across the whole board in lightweights. Maybe it's because of how many drivers there are, like you said, and maybe because a lot of them are new. But maybe once that community gets built up, it becomes a better environment, and so people are friendlier on track. I do wonder as well if now in the lightweights more people kind of bring along family members or different people. That means that drivers don't interact with each other as much as maybe in the heavies, because I do see more, I guess, non-drivers in the lightweights as well.
And family members, I don't find add much positive when the racing's going wrong. The family members can jump in and say, "Oh, that was a terrible move. That was horrible," and whatever. And sometimes that just isn't the case. But when they've seen their kid get bunked off or whatever, the parents or the supporters, it doesn't add to the psyche of, "Oh, I've not had a good race. I wonder why that is." So sometimes the parents, that when you stay there in your own little insular group, it sometimes adds a negative aspect to that sort of paddock and that sort of respect between racers.
I think it's important as well, where a bit like you're saying there, where you'll have. I'm all for people coming along and supporting friends and family. I mean, it makes it good to watch, and it's always nice having more people there to clap the people that have done well enough to get on a podium. Like, no one wants to be getting on a podium and everyone's gone home already, or there's very few people there. I think that's one nice thing about Club 100 is in general most people stay for the podiums, which I think is really good. But um, I mean, I was I suppose eavesdropping in a way over Sunday, but I think sometimes people watching have a skewed view as to something that's happened on circuit, and their perception of it as a spectator is considerably different to the perspective of the driver, where you're there in the moment, and as a driver, you're like, okay, it was a robust move, but it was perfectly fair. It is what it is, sort of thing. I'll tuck in, I'll get them on the next corner. But the family and friends that are watching on the sidelines think that you've just been absolutely murdered and it's completely unacceptable. Whereas as a driver, you're like, no, it was fine. It was racing, and these things happen. It didn't bother me, which I know is like a moment that you sort of had on the Sunday. I think it was that, where it's a case of, well, no, it is what it is. Whoever it was came in a little bit quick.
Oh yeah, I mean, Kurt virtually busted a rib. He came in that hard, so I was like almost dead and buried. I came around turn 3, and he was like, just pop on back through. So, no harm, no foul sort of thing. He came in too heavy. It was definitely a penalty, and he let us back through. So I didn't like the move, but everything's fine because he kind enough to let me back through, turned round, said thank you very much, and but it wasn't very characteristic of him, to be honest. I think he did have a bit of a ropey start with some of his moves, but he's been much better now, and I thought it was fine.
A bit more communication and a bit more maybe waiting for your family and friends driver to come in and give their sort of feedback first before you start saying, oh, so and so should have done this, they should have got a penalty, this, that, and the other. And let the actual drivers say what they thought of it first, and then maybe that will contribute to more camaraderie, maybe. Because I think you're right in terms of the heavies in general has a bit more of a respectful atmosphere. It comes across, and that's not saying that you don't have respect in the lightweights, but maybe it's still developing.
For my own sake, it's a very dangerous thing that we do, and I've been ejected out of a kart before, and I don't want that to happen again. So I come across most people and say hello, you okay, and shake their hand, and I really do like that aspect of the heavies. where we all get on. We're all pretty good friends, and generally, if you get on with most people, they don't come and send you off into the barrier. There are still one or two. I don't know, red and blue drivers that can do that at times. But other than that, it's pretty decent.
I think it's something that you just pointed out there as well. The fact that but in the heavies, it genuinely does feel like if there's a driver that you're a bit worried about in terms of turning in or maybe being a bit too aggressive, you know, there's only a few. Like we were saying,
Adam
Alex, on the
Mather.
weekend that you could pretty much name them. But yeah, you can name them off the top of your head. So they're usually the exception, not the rule. Whereas in the lightweights, you could list off half the grid, which you then don't know who's actually going to be the one turning in because a lot of them kind of tend to do it, the majority, which just shows kind of the contrast. Like, yeah, there's only a few drivers in the heavies. Then most of the racing is actually okay because when you do get potted off, it's like surprising. You don't expect it. Whereas in the lightweights, I've definitely heard the sentiment that drivers are like, I just kind of expect at this point to just be shoved off uncharacteristically or just completely be taken out in a heat, which you don't want the racing to be like that. You don't want to go into a weekend expecting to be taken out. Whereas in the heavies, you usually get into a heat and you expect it's going to be pretty clean for the most part. So, yeah.
I mean, I don't want this to feel like we're absolutely bashing the lightweights either. But I mean, this is the perception that we, as a different class and people that don't race with them, have kind of developed over the course of this season. And I'd say last season it was very different. And
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think it's an undeserved reputation, but it's certainly a reputation that can be amended and changed and made more positive for sure.
Say a lot of lightweights, like because I do stay for the lightweights, that a lot of them seem to hold the same opinion of the current reputation of the lightweights. It's not just oh, we're in a different class and we're looking like we're seeing this and just commenting offhand. It's their perception as well for quite a few of the drivers. So I think it's just echoed by most of the paddock at this point.
Yeah, I think that it's evidenced by the number of penalties, the videos that show up, the people that are in the barriers and stuff like that. But I have to say, in terms of carnage, and you guys weren't around for this, I don't think. The super finals, Jesus Christ, they were just like, you've had a great day, you've finished third, and you're sixth on the grid for a super final. Oh, you finished fifth and you're 10th on the grid for the super final. Everybody was dead in turn one. There was just nobody left. No one came out of a super final. And I got to the point where I said, I just don't want to do any more super finals. Everyone was just getting too mixed up in them. Because you have your sort of your emotional high of, oh, I've done brilliantly. I've made a super final. Now it's back to square one. I've got to race even harder than last time because it's another trophy for me to win. Yeah, I hope those don't come back. That is the opposite of things we wish for next year. Not a super final.
You talked about like having an encyclopedia on Adam. I'd like to do an encyclopedia on you, Alex. Or rather, I'd like you to give us the encyclopedia on you. So it's like seeing as you're the honoured guest in this one. Who is Alex Pritchard as a racing driver? And then me and Adam can say if we agree.
Okay. Yeah, I do have an encyclopedia on everybody. In terms of racing superpowers, I do feel like knowing a lot about people is sort of one of mine, and that I had a diagnosis quite late in life of Asperger's. So when it comes to wet weather racing, my brain maps out a track, and if there's any dry patches or whatever, it has a full breakdown of every inch of a track every time I go through it, and it updates every time I do that. And but that's part of what makes me me really. But I started nearly 20 years ago roughing people up in indoor karting. I went to a little track in Stoke where a buddy of ours, Dan, started as well. And you'd just smash each other up no penalties, and fight in the car park is generally how that goes. And eventually I turned to two-stroke racing. I did my first full championship, and so that was about 20 years ago. I did my first full championship outdoors at DMAX in 2017, and then the second year I did that, I won my first, national championship, and I've just gone bigger and better since then. I wasn't a particularly great driver, and I think that in lap time terms, I think that over the years, both of you have put better lap times in than me over most races. But I feel like I'm a very, very high level racer in terms of if there's a move to be made, or you can make it clean, or you need to get through a pack or whatever. That's my sort of strength in the racing. You both commented on how difficult I am to overtake, and that adds to the sort of difficulty of trying to win over us on track. I feel that I always tell people I've got a broken driving style, and I the way that I extract a lap out of the track is sort of not quite optimal, but because I do it with confidence, I get it to work for me. And you guys find it difficult to overtake us because I'm a premature turner. If you look at what's that corner where you go down the hill at Wilton and turn right? Is that Ashby?
Right, Ashby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at Joe or Anwar or you guys, you actually turn into that a metre or two later than I do. I turn into it a bit too early. It makes me quite difficult to overtake because I'm coming to the apex too early, and I brake very, very late as well. So I'm very hard on the brakes and very early on the turn-in. And I think that what somewhere like Rye House needs, it must need very, very hard braking and very sharp turn-in too early, traditionally. And I think that's where that comes out. And, I'm a very analytical person when it comes to all this stuff, which is why I have the sort of mental encyclopedia of absolutely everybody that I race against. Everything I've ever seen is like catalogued, put away, and then ready to utilize to, my benefit in when I'm driving with someone. And, Joe's got one, Kurt's got one, you guys have got one. And I feel like when I'm racing with someone, that knowledge of, okay, if you, for example, we talked about this this weekend with you, Tim, and that you quite like to push along and you don't go for that many moves. Well, that's there and ready to, utilize in terms of my knowledge of you. So that final that we had, the A final at Bayford, I didn't defend anything because I knew that you were faster than I was. You're happy to push for a while, and when you're ready, you'll make a move and you'll go. If I defend you, perhaps I could have beaten you, but I would have dragged 15 carts towards me and I could have finished 15th. And I don't think I could have held you off because the moment I didn't defend turn one, you'd have nailed me if you wanted to. And if I defended turn one too much, you'd have nailed the outside of me and got to turn two first. And that didn't even require much in terms of sort of overtaking. But yeah, I feel like me as a driver, as an introduction to me, I'm always going to be hunting moves out, and that's what I enjoy in my racing. I like finding bumpers. I like creating moves or unusual moves to go through, but to go through cleanly without losing much time, which is where I've been a slower driver in comparison to the top guys, but scoring loads of wins and loads of points in the heats, even as a virtually 100-kilo driver at times. I was leading Rye House at 98 kilos, and that's in turn from the fact that I'm a very high level racer and that I enjoy the dicing aspect of finding gaps and making it work without costing myself too much time.
I think I have to say as well, I don't want to say the best because it's you got to always leave it open there, but if not the best, incredibly close to the best gestures on circuit that you can find.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, it's like whenever I've come up behind you, I've always tried to be a little bit off center so the camera will pick it up better. When you sort of turn around, you realise it's me behind you, and like you said already, like okay, well, I'll at least get pushed along for a little bit, and you know that we can potentially catch up with the guy in front. And I just always want to be a little bit off center so I can catch the gestures that are about to come out.
The thing is, I don't take the racing that seriously. I'm like having fun, so I'll always turn around and wave at you. Or I do a lot with Nicky because obviously he's he's taught Lewis Hamilton how to brake. So I've given Nicky the whole blessed side. That was a Lewis thing, wasn't it? He's blessed, and my favourite one is casting the reel out.
Yeah.
Cause you had that one of your videos, because I'm like reeling them in.
Yeah.
So I don't know how else to communicate all that stuff, but I feel like the people behind get what I'm sort of saying most of the time.
I mean, both. I think it's a nice little segue because both of you guys, Adam, you so more recently, you've been getting some work in with Sam in the test sessions. Obviously, Alex, you've been working with Nicky for a long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think I really need to do a. If you don't know who Nicky is, if you're listening to this podcast and you do Club 100, you know who Nicky Richardson is.
Know.
If you don't know who Nicky Richardson is, shame on you, because I mean, you go back in time a bit, and the accolades within the karting sphere speak for themselves. But I think it'd be interesting from both of you to sort of find out how working with the tuition, whether it's from Sam, with you, Adam, or with Nicky for you, Alex, like how that's informed either what you do now or even how it's informed how you've become as a driver.
Yeah, but I would just say before that, just because we were going to say what our thoughts were on Alex's self-encyclopedia, I think that was really accurate. The only one thing I'd mention is you didn't talk much about your wet weather driving. Anytime it's wet in the race weekend, I know you're going to be somewhere in like the top 3. You're a massive threat in the wet. And it's noticeable how much quicker in the wet you can be, and it's always a worry when I know it's raining, because I just know
I think that
be really on it.
The wet weather thing, because most of the time I'm just in there loving driving round. So if it looks cool, then it's fast. Is my sort of view of the wet weather. And I've spent a lot of time sliding around with Nicky. It's not what you do; it's the confidence that you have in it. So if you go tight or wide, if you've got 100% confidence in it, then you're going to be great. And I drive around as much as I can with 100% confidence that I'm not going to die, because you have to send it in as if you're going to crash. That's the sort of entry speed.
That's quotable.
fully locked up, and I'm going to die in this corner, entry speed locked up. And Nicky was a great teacher in that respect on that. But yeah, it's just to be honest, I'm just laughing to myself the whole time. Like, that was an amazing slide, or even better, I've actually slid past someone doing a move. So it's just a confidence thing. And unfortunately, Anwar has picked up on that, because he's not been a great wet weather driver. But when he heard about this whole, just do it with confidence, he got better at it by saying, oh yeah, I've just been too much of a wimp, sort of thing. And that's where his speed came from. But yeah, so that sort of slidey aspect and having fun and confidence it has helped out an awful lot. And Nicky's been very good with that. The one thing that sort of bakes my noodle, though, is Joe is even faster than I am generally in the wet, but he's the opposite. He's very smooth. I don't get it. I really, really don't get it. Dicky was the same. I think Dicky and Joe are both about as good as the wet weather driving got. And they were both very, very smooth, and I didn't get it. I'm completely the other direction in the slidey everywhere. So yeah, they are the guys to try and emulate, but realistically, I don't think anyone will on them too.
Right. I mean, your confidence, Colin, actually goes into a segue with at least for me, with Sam Dolan's tuition that I've been taking this year. And I originally started it because there's no endurance this year as a format, so I had one less thing that I was doing on the weekend, and I thought for me it was just how efficiently can you gain lap time, and to me, I couldn't figure out where the gaps were in deltas towards tracks to the top drivers like your Joe, your Anwars, and both yourselves. And I thought the only way I could really figure it out, other than entering another race event, would be to get the tuition with Dimlo during the sprint testing. But I think the biggest thing it's given me is confidence, because Anwar said it on the weekend actually after the racing that one of my biggest weaknesses is composure. And I can wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think a lot of that comes to lack of confidence. If I have one bad race, even if I know it could be a dreadful car, I could have had something really unlucky happen to me. Like even if you can almost say that 90% isn't my fault and it's not how I'm driving the track, I can lose confidence really, really quickly. And it's happened in quite a lot of races where even just heats throughout a day, even if I've had a win already, I've had a bad heat and I just think, oh, I'm driving this track really badly. I then try and change how I'm driving the track, and that's been a real struggle. Whereas now in the testing, a lot of Sam's comments to me is like, actually, no, you're doing these corners right. You're fine. There's one or two little things, but mostly you just keep doing what you're doing. Don't change it up, and that has been really helpful. And I think it's helped my pace. I mean, I've been towards the top of the A finals a lot more than I was last year, and I'm now able to come into races with a bit more confidence. It has been knocked at times, but luckily the grid. In fact, Alex actually, like after the Risington A final, again built me back up a bit as well. So I think the paddock actually helps a bit if I ever had a bad race, like even just people just giving me a bit of a chin up just gives you that confidence I need. And I think that's the biggest thing that doing tuition with Dimler has given me.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar for me. I don't do any work on lap times anymore. Generally, Nicky doesn't give me much in terms of corners or what to do. Generally, now I'm pretty fast. What we do is we just do half an hour on Saturday, half an hour on Sunday of dicing with each other. So we laugh at all the people that crash, which just brings the tone to a not being too serious kind of level. And then we dice. Okay, someone's over there. They've gone there. Create an interesting move. And Nicky is very good in giving us that sort of confidence. And that's all it is. I don't tend to suffer from what you said, Adam, in terms of if you have a bad race. With Asperger's, I don't really have any feelings. So they might be hurt if I had feelings, but I don't have any. Yeah, I just tend to, just have fun and then tend to sort of just drag the good performances out. But I find that having an hour's worth of dicing with Nicky, it just puts us in a headspace of, okay, I'm not going to take it too seriously and just slip a move in, just overtake these guys and just move forward without costing myself too much time. To his credit, and we all know how good Nicky is, but we would all have something to worry about if Nicky started racing. And I don't think there'd be a driver out there that would beat him. In all the years I've spent with him, he is the greatest ever to do it. In wet races, no one would come close to him. And I think in the dry, how he positions his cart and how he gets moves done, he's done stuff which is just I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes.
I'd love to see Joe and Nicky versus Anwar together in a race. It's the top the top three heavies versus Nicky, to see how that would actually go.
If they're all the same weight and all the carts were the same, Nicky would work them out and he would batter all of them. I think that he is. But he's done 1 million miles in these go-karts. His seat time says a lot. He does test them as well, so he knows more about how to get the lap time out of the carts than anybody else. But I mean, I'd actually mentioned this to you guys before, but you're going to love this. And I said to you about this. I don't know if this is his secret move or
I remember
what.
you mentioned.
Oh, you're gonna love this, and you're gonna
Well,
do this.
I was
You're
going to
gonna
say
think this doesn't
you'll have
work.
to message me afterwards. You'll message him and be like, "Was I allowed to say this?" And if not, there'll just be like 3 minutes of bleep for the for the next bit of the podcast.
No, well, the thing is you. Well, put it this way: you two can't do it anyway. Neither of you two are good enough to do it. I'm not good enough to do it, and the strength all three of us have got combined, karting strength, is not enough to do a Nicky. So Nicky, so I have the radio on, right? And we have a laugh with each other, and I'm like, I break there and got past you, and that's what Lewis would have done to you if you'd raced each other or whatever. I have a good laugh with Nicky. But going through the corners, Nicky, he squeaks like a mouse, right? So he goes through the corners like, ee. I'm like, why are you just squeaking? And he he's squeaking because he's putting in that much effort to go around a corner. And what he's doing is sort of like, let's go this way. He's pushing on the steering wheel. So he's like pushing like this onto the steering wheel. And maybe it keeps it a bit more stable through the corners. I thought maybe he's pushing that hard that it's actually pushing the chassis taut. But he put so much effort into the corners and sort of pushing on the steering wheel. Maybe it just makes it a bit smoother or whatever. So we were at Clay. I tried this one corner and I ran out of strength. So, you got to think all these years, and I do full weekends, right? I do all championships. I do the extra practices. My karting strength is as much as anybody's. I did one corner and gave up. I ain't got the strength for it. So you two, next time you two go out for a race, you're going to go through a corner and push on the steering wheel and try and go through the corner, and you'll wear yourselves out.
Is this why all the steering wheels are dished down towards? Because he's been. Well, I was going to say we'll go to Clay Pigeon and you'll be watching people on the Saturday morning going through Billy's blind, and everyone's going to be pushing on the wheel for that one corner, and then they'll come out looking shattered.
yeah, and that's what it is. And we all have our own nuances of how we drive, and Nicky is the greatest. And I just think that because Nicky's karting strength is absolutely unbelievable. His strength through his arms and shoulders, whatever, it's mega. But for him to be able to do that, and I know when he's doing it because he squeaks like a mouse. He's like, ee.
What you should have done is you should have just stopped there and not talked about. It's like what Nicky.
I thought that's what he's going to do.
He squeaks.
I honestly thought that was it. Then. He just squeaks for a corner.
Yeah, what he actually does, he just makes farmyard animal noises as he goes round, and he works out. You know what? That corner's quicker if I do a cow.
Yeah.
Well, that's his best Mickey Mouse impression.
Yeah. So turns 1 and 2 at Wilton. That's chicken. If you're not doing chicken, you're not quick.
just talking about just a very small segue. If anyone's got Nicky's tuition videos, the wet footage of Wilton is probably the greatest wet footage you've ever seen in your life. I mean, he comes out of the last corner, he's already sliding for turn 1, pretty much. And he slides through it and zips through. And then, what he does at a wet Wilton is just, unbelievable. I would go straight to that and buy his tuition video now and view the wet Wilton footage. It is unbelievable.
Would that be on your wish list for next year? You'd have Nicky Witcherson track guides, is it?
Well, yeah, it should be on everyone's wish list because it does help you, especially if you're a C3 driver looking to go up to C2, and in terms of pace, there's a lot of help in there for lap times and stuff. Yeah, but the thing is, as all of his wet videos, he is so advanced and so Nicky-ized in terms of sliding everywhere. No bugger can do any of his wet sort of, not even I can do the same sort of stuff in the wet that he does, even though I'm sort of a similar style to him. And it's almost completely useless. He's just too much of a god. It's like trying to create the universe in a go-kart.
Yeah, but yeah. So if you can get Nicky's guide, and that'll be on your wish list. But I've got a wish list for 2026. Do you want to hear it?
Go ahead.
Yes.
I was going to say
I'm curious.
that was a perfect chance for you to say no, and we'd just end the podcast. Right. So my wish list for next year. Now I've tried. Hopefully you guys have got one as well. But I've tried to come up with 3 things that I think, whilst they might not happen, they're not out the realms of possibility that they could be feasible, sort of thing. But I'll get the super boring ones out the way first, and the kind of pessimistic ones. So my first one is that race exclusions should count as a score.
You've mentioned this a lot.
I mention this a lot because it really pisses me off. Every other race series you'll ever find, if you get excluded, that's it. You have to carry that 0, and I don't understand why we don't do it.
I'll take bets on how close to 0 Adam Britton is.
Guess who's being punted off next meeting? So yeah, that's
I was
my
going to
first
say,
one.
watch out, Clay.
He'd have to catch me first.
So yeah, that's my first one. Is that you should have to carry a 0. Because if you've done enough to get excluded, then shame on you. So my next one, again, this wouldn't happen for next year, but I think it would be interesting with the whole hubbub that there is around this new Silverstone karting circuit, which will hopefully mean that the UK can host rounds of more rounds of the European and Worlds. Because at the moment, I'm pretty sure the only place that can actually hold a European or a World round is PF. And I've never driven PF, but I can imagine there are more interesting circuits out there than PF. So the Silverstone one looks like it could be quite good, and I probably wouldn't say on its main layout, because that is very much set up for much faster karts than what we have. But on the overhead view, there's quite a lot of alternate layouts, and one of those could be quite interesting. And I think it would just be quite cool. It's very central in the country, so it would be easy for a lot of people to get to, and I think it would be quite a cool venue to go to. Even actually, I'm going to sneak in a quick extra wish list. I know a while ago, didn't Club 100? You might know this, Alex. Club 100 did like special one-off meetings. They went over to Spa once, didn't they?
Oh, Spa, yeah. So they changed that for PF, where they would go over to Spa and do 10-hour races, where you'd have 10 one-hour races across a team. But yeah, they did that, and then they did the same again. So 10 or 12-hour races, where you'd get a bunch of 1-hour races back to back at PF. So yeah, they were pretty good, but JV's focus now on the sort of junior and the cadet stuff has sort of left all that sort of special stuff for us behind, I think, unfortunately.
Maybe that could be a comeback. Maybe we could have a one-off meeting, a bit like you've got Kart Masters and the O plate. We could have the JV plate, and if you win the one-off meeting, you get to run the GV plate for the next year.
Yeah, that would be good at Silverstone.
And then yeah, my last wish list one is probably the one that is most topical. So I think it'd be cool to have a bit of a varied race calendar. So there's a few circuits that I think would be interesting to have in place of, or possibly in addition to, what we already have. Now, the ones I kind of went around, and I had some criteria. So the first criteria is that it had to be a circuit that I think Club 100 would get good racing on, because there are plenty of circuits around the UK that in a senior Rotax or in an X30 or in a whatever would be great fun, but maybe not in a Club 100 kart with the different limitations that you have on them. So
Jennington.
So the ones that I kind of picked up were Mansell, otherwise known as Dunk as well, Rower up north, and a bit of a wild card, the Thruxton Kart Centre. And then also Rednall, which I think is kind of Wales way, and Kimbolton on one of the alternate layouts. So I'll put up the different layouts that you can see on the podcast, and you can maybe have a bit of a comment as to which one you think would work. First one should be Kimbolton. So I think that one would be kind of
Yeah.
interesting. Like you've got some longish straights, so you've got a chance to build up some speed and have some overtakes under brakes at tighter corners. But then that kind of like first sector, the layout that I've chosen uses the slightly tighter, twistier parts of Kimbolton, and it doesn't use the second chicane. It kind of uses the slightly tighter first one before going into the Dan Weldon corner at the top. So I think that one could work. I don't know about you.
I've been told by a lot of people who do owners about how good Kimbolton is as a circuit. Now, obviously, that doesn't always translate to Club 100, PF being the best example to that, I think. But so many people have said how good Kimbolton is that I really want to try it. And that is that the first sector. I've never done the track, but the twisty first sector looks really fun on that track layout, and I think it'd be a good addition. Something different.
No, I've not done any of these that you said. A good person to ask on this would be Anwar. Anwar's done everything over the years, so he would. He's probably been there, raced it, and everything. But yeah, the tight and twisty bit looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Kimbolton when I was doing practices ready for my ARCS test, and I think I did a Super One round there as well. It was a part of my karting career where I wasn't very good anyway, so I couldn't tell you how good it was as a circuit. But I know it gets well regarded. The next one is Mansell. I think out of all of them, that one's probably the most dangerous of not working because I think in a Club 100 there's a lot of corners that in a owner driver would be very quick, and you'd need to slow down considerably for them. But in a Club 100, maybe you could just keep it pinned.
Well, you've got three corners there in the sort of middle, where they're like the snail corner at Bayford. The two in the centre and then one on the right, where you're not just turning, you're turning and then coming back on yourself with a tightening radius. And I don't think the Club 100 carts are that good because I don't think they're fast enough to make it challenging to overtake people and stuff on that. But it looks very good. It's very, very straight. So I think there'll be a lot of sort of PFI vibes in terms of very long straights, very top endy on the carts. I like that bus stop thing. That's a very lid type bus stop in the middle.
Yeah,
I'd like to have an attack at that.
I think that this is my least applicable. I think it could be a little bit too quick to be good in a Club 100 kart. I think in general, so long as you've got some straights, the twistier the better. I kind of think in a Club 100 the way that they work.
It looks
the next
nice.
one is Rednor. Now Rednor is one that I have never heard of, but I think just looking at the track map, it could be one that works. You've got straights that are short enough that wouldn't turn it into a pure power circuit. So if you had a little bit of a god tier motor, you're not just going to disappear. The first sector looks sort of reasonably quick with some medium speed, and then kind of like your second half of the lap is a lot tighter and twistier. You've got kind of like a poor man's Beckett's and Chapel to sort of end the lap, sort of style.
Which way round is it? Is it clockwise?
I'm trying to figure that out.
It's clockwise, yeah. So where you've got the pit building, that's where the start line is. You've got like a kink left into that kind of long right, a little bit like Billy's Blind, I suppose, at Clay, into that 180, kind of like Stratford hairpin.
That's like the first corner at Bayford, that is. And then quite a tight corner. Fast left.
It doesn't seem to be a lot of track, and what I mean by that, it looks really narrow. So although there's a lot of tight corners, I feel like it looks like it'd be very difficult to race there. It kind of gives me like a kart track that's been made on a car park, to be honest, especially that last sector.
Well, I don't know if you guys have done Milton Keynes, but Daytona Milton Keynes is quite a large track, but a very skinny track. Where there's lots of corners, but there's not much room. You can't be 5 wide. You can't fit 5 carts wide in it.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the same.
Yeah, I think this would be the first sector, especially coming down through. I'm not going to call that left-hander turn 1 because that's not really a corner. On like a mini moto maybe it would be, but not in a go-kart. But like turns 1 the right, and then the right hairpin. I think that section of the circuit is quite wide. And then when you get down to the very tight corner before you go to the switchbacks, I think that widens up a little bit. But yeah, otherwise, I would agree. I think it is quite narrow, and that potentially is a downside for this one. But we
All
do
those
race on some
corners.
narrow circuits.
Yeah, all those corners at the end, I think will be like the Zulu Wilton bit, where you're all going to fire through, but you can't put a move in on any of it.
Yeah, single file, really.
The thing I thought there is that there looks like there's enough space in between where potentially it either could be a potential of firing a move up somebody, or it's a section of circuit where, whilst there might not be a lot of overtaking, it requires some skill to get through it quickly, and it's quite a difference maker between you good and your really good drivers.
I'd love to hot lap it. It looks really fun for a hot lap. I think it's worth trying because A, new track, and B, it could actually be okay for racing. Like, I think what would be turn 3, I guess it would be after the kind of mini straight. I think you could probably make a move into there. Maybe on that snail corner right at the back left of the track could be an overtaking spot as well before what I assume would be a single file section.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks fun to drive. I definitely think for a hot lap session, it'd be fun.
My next one is Rower, and whilst it's a reasonably sort of power circuit, I just really want to drive Rower. Apparently, it's amazing.
Looks nice. A lot of sweeping stuff there.
Yeah.
It is on a seniors calendar, I think.
Is it?
It's on the Northern calendar.
Championship.
Yeah. Well, none of you guys qualify for that.
No. Yeah.
I'm further north than you, Alex. I'm from Blackburn.
Oh yeah. Oh, you do, yeah. I'm surprised you didn't go in for it. To be honest, it's got a good calendar.
I mean,
I'm tempted to next year, to be honest.
I mean, I'm half Scot. Does that make me slightly northern?
Yeah, but your current residence is south of Stoke, though. So so hard luck.
But yeah, I think Rower, just as a circuit, everyone I've ever spoken to has just said it's a great circuit. A little bit like GYG, everyone I've ever spoken to says it's a great circuit. Now I know that in Club 100, GYG has been mixed in terms of response. I've really enjoyed going there. I know other people like it to drive, but not to race. I know other people just really haven't liked it. But this I think is very much a driver's circuit, and it's hard not to enjoy going around it from what I've been told.
Yeah, if it's anything well, GYG is I turn up to GYG different to other tracks because it's close enough to home that I stay at home for GYG, and I go to GYG at 1,000 miles an hour in whatever car I've got on the drive at the time, because it's such good roads to get there.
Yeah.
So I turn up at GYG fully buzzing and mostly knackered and without any tyres left on my road car. You know, having had some good fun on the way. On a 90-minute journey, I do it about 55 minutes.
Now the next one, I think, is legitimately a really, really good option for like a possible Club 100 circuit, which is the Thruxton Kart Centre, which essentially is it's a rental corporate circuit, but it's reasonably wide. It's got quite a cool little crossover. It's twisty enough that the Club 100s would work well around it. Yes, there's some sort of longer straights, but they've got a little bit of character to them, so it shouldn't be. And there's like a little bit of a chicane halfway down the longest one, which would stop it from being an absolute monster straight if you've got a decent engine. And it's a decent length. That the one that I've kind of mapped out is 1,100 meters, so similar to Wilton Mill. So it's a good length circuit, and I think this would be a really cool place to go.
Yeah, it looks good. That does. Very good.
Is that a bridge in the middle?
Yeah. So the start line,
that's quite cool.
You can see where the dummy grid is, and then you can kind of see where the start line is, and then it's a.
Did you say you can see where the start line is? I don't think I can see where the start line is.
Oh,
so you got
a big white building, and then you can see kind of like going across the circuit. There's like a white line next to where the dummy grid.
Oh, got you.
Out.
Yeah. Is it clockwise as well?
Yes, but you've got a figure of 8, so it kind of warps it. So the first turn is that left-hander over the bridge.
Oh, over the bridge, right? Got you.
Yeah. So yeah, over the bridge, turn 1 is the left-hander, and then you kind of go into this little sort of technical section, and then it really opens out for the second half of that. But I think that would be really good fun.
Yeah, I really like the look of it. Actually, I completely agree. This looks really fun.
But do you not think that turn 1, 2, 3, and 4 that there's going to be an ungodly amount of death at turn 4? Because I think you'll be side by side at turns 1, 2, and 3, and everyone will be dead at 4. Sort of like that
You're
turn,
not completely
whatever
wrong.
it is, that tight chicane at Red Lodge, where it tightens up into a tight left and then a tight right when you come out of it. Is that 1 and 2 or 2 and 3? I think everyone's going to be dead at that corner.
Well, I think that comes
Carnage.
down to. I mean, you could say that about any corner at any track, couldn't you? If it
Yeah.
comes down to the drivers and whether or not they give room to each other to race, and that doesn't mean you have to avoid each other like the plague. It's just a case of going, well, coming into this corner, if you're on the right hand side of the circuit, you know you're going to be on the outside for the hairpin part. If you're on the left side, then you're kind of giving yourself a chance, but you might be squeezed going into the hairpin. It's just being aware of who's around you and how to negotiate it. But yeah, that if I was able to pick one and I could say to JV tomorrow, right, JV, this is the circuit I want on the calendar for next year, and he says, yeah, Tim, not a problem. This is the one that I would want.
I would disagree with all of them, and I'd want to go to Silverstone because it's brand shiny new sort of thing. I would just say that one in terms of these interesting layouts. But in those interesting layouts, I'm with you on the Rowra thing. I just want to drive Rowra.
That was my very long wish list for next year, and I've probably taken up all of your time now, and hopefully I haven't used any of the same ones as you wanted. But
you did have so I had different tracks / Silverstone on there, so that was one of mine. So we'll go past that pretty quickly.
Sorry.
And then it's all good. And then, funnily enough, as well, I also had, because I don't think the Endurance Championship will return, at least not in the short term. I was going to talk about the one-off events, but instead of them being like 10 or 6 1-hour races, what they were, I would just like them to be more like very similar to what the endurance format used to be, just so we could have some more team racing. Team racing is my favorite. Like, even after doing 2 years of the sprints, I just prefer the endurance. I'm very much in for the social aspect of karting. I love chatting with people. Hence, part of the reason why this podcast exists, and how we're all able to get on in this. So to just have more team events, I just love being a part of them. I was going to say that I know tracks like Rara, or there's always like Buckmore 24s, Teesside do them, there's Le Mans. I wish at points we can get like a Club 100 team to do some of those 24-hour events, just to get some of some of the heavies in and just do them, because I just think they'd be really fun, and it'd be nice to work as a team for a change instead of it just being all individual. So yeah, something like what the old Endurance Championship used to be, just as a one-off at a track. Maybe that could be Silverstone, who knows? That was the second one I had, other than a different track. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I hated it. So I've always been a heavy driver. I've always been like a 96 kilo driver. So I'm running well at the moment at sort of at 93 at Bayford. But I was 96, 97. I had one round before I met either of you guys. I was 103. And an 85 kilo endurance race for a heavier driver, I just got absolutely battered. And I started every single one. So I was always first. I started the race, and my pace was that good that I was virtually being called in before I'd finished the first lap. I'd start well, I'd get through the pack. I've started on pole for endurances, and we've been very close to winning that endurance championship more than once. But I was always the weak link in it, because an 11 plus kilo difference, unless it was raining, I was just dead in the water in it. So I really didn't enjoy it. If I was 85, then yeah, I would have done more, but I just unfortunately didn't over the years.
Well, that was going to lead into my third topic. It fluctuates massively from round to round. I don't know if I'm just odd compared to most people, but my weight fluctuates massively. So round 1, I barely needed any lead. And now we're sitting at Bayford, where I was just over 83 on the scales, like 80. I think I was below 84. I've lost, 4 or 5 kilos in the six rounds we've done. So it really does just depend on the round. And that was going to go into my third kind of change, actually, about the race weight, which I've chatted to you a bit, Tim. that currently in the heavyweights, it's 90 kilograms kitted, which I think should say the same. It seems to work. But you need to be 83 kilograms on your own in kit to race in the heavyweights. Now, I think you're allowed up to 12 kilograms of ballast on the carts. That's what they say on the post is the right amount of ballast to keep for safety reasons. I wonder if the race weight, the race in heavies, especially so we can get some more people, as we're only limited to 55 people at the moment, and we don't always fill out grids. If that race weight goes down from you needing to be 83 in kit to maybe 80 or something, that you're still within that 12 kilogram lead you're allowed on the post to ballast up, and you get more entries up. And I think it should also be something that if you ever weigh somebody on race weight, it should be done at the start of the year or at the first 1 or 2 rounds of the year, because throughout a season, which typically takes 7 or 8 months, people with either medical issues or whatever can kind of come up can really massively fluctuate your weight. So you could end up below the race weight, or in some cases, if you're maybe a lightweight, you end up you're already on kind of the border of race weight. You end up over the race weight, and then you're struggling to compete in lights. So I don't think it's fair to weigh somebody at round 1 and then say you have to weigh exactly that minimum race at round 9 or 10 by the end of the year when it's the other side of the year, just because you don't know what might happen in somebody's personal life then. So that was my other change to what I'd changed to the regulations, just to have a few more heavy drivers and just to make it maybe easier to get entries in at heavyweight so we have more drivers.
I don't know if now the weight makes as much of an issue since the change of restrictor, because like you look at Rye House and you look at Bayford, the fastest drivers in heavies weren't a million miles off the fastest drivers in lights. Lights were still quicker, as you would expect them to be. I mean, they're going around with a weight advantage, obviously, but I don't think the weight is as much a penalty now as it was previously. And I know super heavies have said that having that bit more power has made a significant difference.
It's made a massive difference. So I'm the evidence of this, in that in the 88 kilo grids, sprint 40 and sprint 60, I've pulled podiums out of that, and I was never anywhere near the podium in years gone by at the same sort of weight, and I'm now able to get to the podiums. But if I'm in an average cart or better, the penalty for weight isn't that much. If I'm in a duff cart, the penalty is that much. So I think that I had pace on everybody at Rye House, and in the same cart, the same weight, I don't think anyone was beating what I got, whatever it was. But I did a practice in a slightly worse than average cart, and Anwar was over 4/10 up on me. Whereas I think he's probably a 10th or 2 slower than me at weight, or both with very good carts. So yeah, in your average and better carts, that difference is smaller now. As I felt like I'm further up, but I'm not necessarily driving better than last year. It's just evened it up with the extra power, because I need that drag out of the slower stuff, and particularly in the power midway down the straight, that's where I would suffer, and I'm not suffering as much. So yeah, the configuration of the carts this year has been better for me, more so than other people.
Yeah, my point was more not on the weight you race at though, so not at 90 kilograms, just the weight you need to be to race in heavy.
Just see if that
just more so
changes
for
the actual initial field, if it encourages more people. And I think that
100%.
there's definitely a validity to that, because I think with the success of the cadets and the juniors, there's going to be more people wanting to go into lightweights who weight-wise are going to be lighter because they are younger. I mean, like if you're expecting a 16-year-old to be 83 kilos, it's not going to happen unless they are a really a big lad. And it's the sort of thing where 16-year-olds that are 83 kilos probably aren't doing motorsport. But this is a massive generalization, but at that age, they're probably looking at doing more more sort of team sports like rugby and things like that. Because if you were 83 kilos as a 16-year-old, you are significantly bigger than your peers, and that would naturally send you down that kind of
like
route.
my Archie at 14 years old, 100 kilos of muscle. I can't wait until he's like 6'7" at like whatever 18, and I can fall out with anyone at racing. I'll just send Archie to deal with them.
Arch, go sort them out. Yeah.
You just got a bodyguard permanently out the rack.
So I think that's something that, I mean, that's a Club 100 problem, not a us as racers problem. But they're going to end up with a lot of juniors that want to come and do lightweights in a constantly reducing pool, and it could be the sort of thing, I suppose, where maybe the lightweight becomes so big because of having this massive influx of junior drivers going from juniors to seniors, that they have to reformat how race weekends work. So like maybe you have like an all day thing on a Saturday where you have like your senior super lightweights and your senior lightweights, a bit like they do in juniors, and then the heavyweights go on a different day, and then there's another championship that runs alongside that sort of thing. Maybe, I don't know.
I hadn't even considered that, but I guess they've kind of dipped their toes in the water with that already, because the format has changed this year in the sense that us heavyweights, we only have 9 heats because we've got a smaller entry list. The day is now weighted more in the lightweights in the sense that they have more heats, they have more finals, just due to having bigger grids, and we've had a reduced day. That now it's really noticeable actually, where you kind of hop off on one heat and it's quite hard to then just go off and have a chat, because typically you're back on in 7 minutes.
I've been enjoying the Sundays though. As a driver that has to travel quite a bit for most rounds, we're away every lunchtime. We're done quick. We have less heats to go through, and we don't ever go home on a Sunday afternoon now. And I've really enjoyed all that. I think that we've been pretty lucky to fall into that category. Whereas I think the lightweights, I don't think they'll disagree with me. They're all going home in the evening. There's a billion heats that you got to sit around for. There's so much competition because you got 15 heat winners, which is making the points much, much closer. I think it was, I can't remember which final it was. It was like 4 or 5 people with 2 heat wins trying to start the front of the A final. Christ. And they're getting the worn out tyres as well. They're not getting new tyres. So I much prefer what we're getting, even though it is a shorter grid, on balance in every way over the lightweight. I feel like we're pretty lucky in that respect.
What's on your list then, Alex? What's your wish list?
Well, it's a good time for this because it's getting a bit dark here, and I can bring on me little idea light. So I actually needed the light right now. I suppose my list. So I've just changed my list. As soon as you brought up Silverstone, I was like, oh, okay, well, let's write another one on here. So Silverstone was on my list to have a drive around there. For me, I've been really impressed with these tyres. And some of this is selfish, and it's more selfish. And some of this is, I think, everyone will benefit from it. I think they are a bit more consistent. They've suited me personally. And I feel like they've been, certainly with that first Rye House weekend, we had like one set of tyres and we were doing the same lap times from the Sprint 40 qualifying to the A final on Sunday on one set of tyres. We've never experienced that in all the years I've done sort of the Club 100 racing. And very, very impressive stuff. And I like driving around on them in Bayford, although Bayford exposed more of the equality of the carts, or lack of. Not terrible, but it did expose it a bit more. But I think I prefer these tyres over the Dunlops, and I think that clay will be the next test because, as we said earlier, very, very high speed. That's going to ask a lot of the tyres, and we'll see if we had, because we had that round a couple of years ago where they were so pitted that we shouldn't really have raced the A final on those tyres. They were absolutely shot. It was quite a difficult A final to undertake. So yeah, these tyres, I would take these tyres next year. I would roll the dice on these, I think.
Out of interest, do you prefer the Bridgestones over the Dunlops?
Probably. I think that the Bridgestones, you needed to drive, like Nicky had the greatest laps on those Bridgestones where he just backed it into every corner. So it looked good because you were sliding round like a boss everywhere. And they were very good to, again, slide around in the wet weather. I think the Bridgestones, yeah, I think I would take the Bridgestones over the Dunlops just to avoid that sort of severe drop off that they were experiencing. But they're all dead and buried now, aren't they? Bridgestone tyres are no more.
It would be interesting. I don't know what their stock is like of them, whether or not they've used up all the tyre ahead of Clay, and they're going to use the same tyres that they had at Bayford on the Sunday for Saturday and Sunday at Clay as well, or whether or not they were planning on running a different compound of the same tyre as like a bit of a test sort of thing. So we were running the greens, weren't we? And then the whites is a slightly harder compound. So I don't know what their plan is for that, but I think it would be interesting for them to try that and see, would the harder compounded tyre provide the same benefit of consistency that these Mitres seem to have over a period of time, but then also be a little bit more challenging to drive with just by having naturally a little bit less grip. So it still brings some of that skill element back into it.
I would prefer not to have the harder compound because I think it would encourage JV to do more of what he did at the beginning of Saturday, having newer fronts and older rears, thinking that the harder compound you could use it over more rounds. It will cost him more, but I prefer to have more instances of fresh four lots of tyres sort of thing on the carts because I just don't like the imbalance of new and old on the same cart.
I think the Mitres are cheaper than the Dunlops as well, from what I've heard.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, they must be because the just the name on the side of it is more recognisable for the Dunlops.
I think there's enough people that either I think more people are indifferent to like the Mitres than there were people that just outright didn't like them.
Yeah, and the availability of them too. So now I've never experienced one of these before as idea number 2. And I think maybe it's just me wanting to experience it, and it's also me thinking it may improve the driving standards. Your favourite idea, Tim, drop down bumpers. So I don't know, how much can I load the line up when we start the race? I don't load lines up, but I press the pedal as hard as possible to push mine forward. Can you still do that with drop down bumpers? How much pressure do you need to pop the thing off? But I think it will make people think more about, because I think some of the poor moves that are coming out of some of the what we're seeing in Club 100 and lightweights at the moment is they're bumping each other in the rear, and if there's something to put you off that, is it going to improve things? And can you still push people down the straight with one and that? So you said you hated this, Tim, and you've got thoughts on it that you wanted to bring out.
I think in owner-driver racing, the drop nose cones provided a quantifiable point of reference for marshals and officials to say that something's happened that it probably shouldn't have. But in that situation, that car isn't having to instantly go out again for another race. It can be taken back to the team awning or the lad and dad awning, which are that's a different topic, but they're becoming less and less. And then they get it ready for their next race, which happens in half an hour's time or whenever it is. I think in a Club 100 context, let's think about like worst case scenario, which is every single driver has a nose cone drop. So on a Saturday, you've got 30 odd drivers in a SP60, SP40 race. How long is it going to take to reaffix all those bumpers in a position that they're then ready to go and safe?
Well, that's the question that I was going to ask you. How do you put one back on? Is it easy? Is it hard?
I never used one, so they came in after I stopped doing owner driver. And from what I understand, you've got your front fairing, your metal front fairing, that then the plastic part of your nose cone goes into, um, and then as opposed to old style nose cones where you had a very distinct single seat that was about the had a internal diameter cutout that was the external diameter of the bar it was affixing to. These ones have more of an ovaled cutout, so you affix the front fairing to the rear of that cutout, and if there's enough force that's then presented, it allows the bumper to be pushed back, and then that's what then creates a greater gap for it to then drop or be pushed back effectively. And then it's a visual test for marshals to look at. And if you're someone that's got more experience of me than of a drop down or pushback nose, please correct me because I'm sure I'm saying something wrong. But yeah, it's essentially a very simple mechanical deviation that creates it. And yeah, whilst it would be an effective way of being like, well, if your nose cone drops, you lose 5 places or whatever the penalty would end up being. I just can't see it being applicable in a Club 100 context. It would just take too long to. And even then, let's say you got into a car where someone had bumped, but not quite enough for it to drop.
Yeah.
Now you're sat in a car that,
one.
if you look at the front bumper funny, it drops and you've done nothing wrong.
I was with you, Alex. I thought that might be a decent idea.
Yeah, I don't want to poo-poo ideas, but I just can't see it working in a Club 100 context.
I would have more of an opinion on it if I knew if I tried one and I knew what the force was. Okay, I can push someone down the straight. I can do this. I'm not going to kick my own bumper off as I trip over my cart trying to put my stuff on it. If I knew more about the force it could take, then I would have more of an informed opinion. But I've just never used one before, and I'm trying to stop all the rear bumper nonsense that can happen. And for my other idea, which is something that helped to bring in years gone by, I'd like to see Driver of the Day come back for Sprint 60. That was something that I sponsored before when I had the Applewood company that's now no more. And it wasn't an expensive sponsorship. Basically, we set it all up, and I got the trophies as such for the whole season. And I'd give away some hoodies with like Applewood, and I had a big one and a small one, and just a little bag of goodies. And the idea that I'd sort of had with JV is that you don't generally give it to the podium sitters. You give it to someone who might be a Class 2 winner of a Sprint 60 or whatever. And I think that pretty much everyone that was in Sprint 60 had one over the years. It's a nice little trophy, and we had a goodie bag. And although I did ask for it, they never awarded it to me for some reason, although I wasn't part of the committee that decided it. I said, Luke, for God's sake, can you at least consider me for one? Because I'd like to have the trophy for it. And they never did, even though I had races that were worthy of it. Because the Sprint 60 can be a bit of a lonely outcome for drivers that can finish 5th at best or 10th at best. And you can just sort of say, have your picture on the podium. Because there are some drivers like us, I've got nearly 300 podiums and trophies at home. He's won 25 championships. I don't know how many trophies he's got, but it's a lot. And you guys have had podiums and you got trophies. There are some people that have never had anything. And I really like that aspect of someone who's not a regular podium sitter having a really good day. They finish 12th, which for them is the best they've ever had, and potentially they get a trophy out of it. I really like that, and it's a shame that I couldn't get it to continue.
I never did the SP60s, but when you had the Driver of the Day, because it was just before the endurance or just after the endurance, I thought it was one of my favourite things when I started Club 100, even though I wasn't even a part of it. Just seeing somebody who normally doesn't get in the limelight having what is a really good day for them. is a real booster, and especially if you're just starting out. Let's say it's your first year of Club 100 racing. Chances are, if you're new to rental karting, you're not going to be anywhere near a podium, especially in the SB40 and 60, where there's not really classes other than the heavyweight and super heavyweight. I think I'm right there. And so to just have like a really good result for you being recognised, I thought was really, really lovely. And I always thought that I wish it almost took off for other championships. And I think that is probably of all our wish lists one of the best suggestions that you can have. I think it's such a great initiative, and I don't really see many downsides to it. It's just celebrating an everyman guy who doesn't
that was
have the best results.
It was something that I was potentially thinking about putting on my wish list, but I think it'd be quite nice to have a driver of the day come back as just like a supplementary award, because I think it was really cool, and it helped put a bit of recognition onto people that had really good days, but maybe maybe their first race didn't go particularly well, but then they had an absolutely phenomenal drive in race 2 to get a podium or something in that race, but they still wouldn't get a podium overall, sort of thing. It's a cool idea, but I think it'd be really cool to have like different trophies for each race. So like your round 1 trophies are different from your round 2, and then they're different from your round 3 and stuff. Just so if you're lucky enough to be really good and get a trophy most of the time, at least it varies it up a little bit. Or even if you're not someone that gets trophies all the time, it's kind of like, oh, like this is like if I get that one, it's a recognizable trophy from that particular race. It doesn't just look like all the other ones.
And there was a lot of drivers have their first ever podium for driver of the day, and I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing as well. And on that, hopefully you listener or watcher or both have thought that this has been a good thing and you've enjoyed it going into your ear holes. Alex, thank you for being our first guest. I hope you enjoyed the experience.
Very welcome. It's been great. Thank you for the invite.
Adam, thank you as always. And thank you listeners and viewers. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, have a good one. Say goodbye, everyone.
Yeah,
Goodbye,
see you guys
everyone.
at play.